Right, so hello everyone. Today we're going to have a preview and a brief discussion about what is blended learning and what you need to know about blended learning. So, hello, my name is Sir Michael Cañada, and I'm going to give you blended learning. So, when you say blended learning, it is a term increasingly used to describe the way e learning is being combined with traditional classroom methods and independent study to create a new hybrid teaching technology. So, apart from the fact that we know that when we hear the word blended learning, we use technology, but still, we can do away with the fact that traditional classroom methods are very much relevant when it comes to the blended learning scheme. Now, when you talk about the blended cycle or the blended learning cycle, it could be um, expressed or illustrated with this illustration. It involves personalized learning, it involves teacher led small group instruction, and it caters to collaboration or even student individual or independent learning. So, a part of this, these are the things that we need in that cycle, that we need an in-person classroom activity facilitated by a trained educator. So, meaning to say, we don't have to worry about in the advent of or the rise of blended learning that we teachers are not anymore relevant in the classroom. In fact, we are still very much relevant. Then, there would be online learning materials that would be very, very important that often will include pre recorded lectures given by that same instructor. Now, what do we mean by this? Meaning to say, you as the teacher could record or could prepare in advance your own material and then send it to the students so that they could, in their own free time, could watch it or try to rethink of it, relearn it in the comfort of their homes. Then there is structured independent study time guided by the material in the lectures and skills developed during the classroom experience. So these skills could be harnessed more if we're going to support them with the materials that we're going to send them. And these materials might be in the form of videos recorded by the teacher himself or curated by the teacher, meaning to say coming from other links like in YouTube or in other applications in the internet. And we can also give additional formative assessments in for them to be able to answer and do. And we as teachers, since it's going to be structured, we're going to set some limits on it. We can double check if students are working on it. We can double check if the students still have difficulties on certain competencies. All right. Next, apart from this, we are now seeing this illustration that there seems to be a transition that we can see since we're advocating 21st century learning and 21st century education. We are now living the portals of the brick and the mortar type or the face-to-face discussion wherein it's the highlight of that is more on conversation, negotiated interaction, production, collaboration, and application, and we are moving towards blended learning. And ultimately, we can hopefully in the near future we can also harness virtual learning. But in blended learning, there is a mix already of virtual and face to face. So when you talk about virtual or online learning, it's self paced, it's focused on language skills, authentic content, practice and feedback, and progress monitoring. So if it's a course created in a blended learning model, it still uses classroom time for activities that benefit the most from direct instruction. In blended learning model, lectures can be videotaped ahead of time so that student can watch on their own time. The classroom time is more likely to be for structured exercises that emphasize on the application of the curriculum to solve problems through tasks. So it's going to be a model that would somehow tap the help of technology in order for us to somewhat compress maybe our competencies. We often say that there is a problem right now with how our curriculum is fully packed with a lot of competencies, and that the main problem of the teacher is how to finish it up until the eighth week of classes. And so, with the help of the blended learning model, which we will try to discuss more on its modalities, on its processes, we can actually have um, con or we can decongest the if there's really a lot of competencies that we need to cover, and hopefully we can do that, and hopefully blended learning could work in our favor. All right. Now, still, if we're going to look at it, the classroom time is still dominated by the teacher-led whole class instruction. Meaning, if we're going to do percentage-wise, teacher-led whole class instruction is still very, very important in the pie. And because of that, if we're going to use blended learning, we can allocate online differentiated instruction. We can also allocate small group instruction, which would somehow be based from interventions that we can have based from our students' responses in those online activities that we are going to give them. So, a usual year in a blended learning setup may emphasize classroom time at the beginning, since still, like for example, early part of the first quarter, you would still have to give some rules, some instructions, and students would still have to adjust, and you yourself would have to master the content and how applications work. Then gradually increase the amount of work that students do online or during independent study. Now, blended learning is actually redefining the roles of the teachers. Why? Because the move to blended learning has inspired educators to redefine traditional roles. The word facilitator has emerged as now an alternative to teacher, bringing with it slightly different focus. And what's the focus of that? Of course, our 21st century skills that we try to really inculcate in our students. The facilitator places an emphasis on empowering students with the skills and knowledge required to make the most of the online material and independent study time, guiding students toward the most meaningful experience possible. Now, facilitators, as what we're calling it right now, will focus on four key areas. Number one, we need to develop online and offline course content. So, which means that we need to immerse ourselves, be familiar with online and offline applications so that we could manage or we could utilize their contents and give it to our students. Facilitation of communication with and among students, including the pedagogy of communicating content online without the contextual clues students would get in person. Meaning to say, we need to somewhat give instructions to our students, make them also aware, and help them to be masters, or help them to process all these things that we're going to use, especially the ones in the online platform. And this focus actually will not be very very difficult, as we know our students right now are really very good when it comes to these things. Guiding the learning experience of individual students and customizing material wherever possible to strengthen the learning experience. So, as teachers, we need to broaden and widen our horizons when it comes to other platforms in learning. We need to read more, we need to search the net, we need to find ways and means, especially new materials to give to our students. And as what they say, the fastest way to become an old dog is to stop learning new tricks, right? So um, even if we're retiring or we're just starting from in the teaching profession, it doesn't make any difference, because with this blended learning thing, all of us are new every time. Last is, of course, assessment and grading, because here it's not like the traditional way that we know. So meaning to say, if we use blended learning, we need to be, of course, somewhat flexible in our grading or devise new assessment plans in order for us to rate authentically our students. Now, just to before we get too excited in doing this, let me describe to you as what I perceive to be what will happen if we're going to proceed with our blended learning plan. It's going to be a hell of a learning adventure. It's an adventure, but I hope that each and every one of us will try to exhibit a growth mindset. We will be proactive in trying to learn and accept all the changes that will happen. Also, we can change our perspective because we need to embrace now some changes, and we need to let go to somewhat relearn and unlearn our perspective and our pedagogy and education. But I know that the experience will be worth it. All right. So before I end, these are some tips to use if we're going to do blended learning, and this is according to Carol Tucker. First, you need to start small. Why? Because there are tons of technologies and tools that we can use out there. So it's going to be very, very much overwhelming if we're going to do all of them together. So we just have to choose one or two, for example, and then we're going to try and master each of that. We need to become comfortable with one before going to another. And always be open because mistakes happen. And that is the only thing that we could learn. So we don't have to give up. Ask help. And actually, we could ask help even from our students because we know that they are the digital natives. They have grown up with it, which means that it's going to be natural for them and like us who are only migrants in this time. So we need to be open. We need to take it slow, and of course, don't be afraid to ask for help. So if you still have any more questions with when it comes to what blended learning is, you can also do your own research, or you can check out the succeeding videos that I will upload, and try to see from there if still you will have other problems, or it's go time for you when it comes to the blended learning approach. So once again, I'm Sir Michael, and thank you for your time.